She tells him, ooh, love, no one's ever gonna hurt you, love. I'm gonna give you all of my love. Nobody matters like you.
Love is the fire of life. Regardless, Perry, let me take you to the sprout bed since, when I initially saw her, she was passing on in the nursery the back of a bistro, and she had a daisy in her hair, a daisy particularly like the ones in this bloom bed. I had mentioned a few chamomile tea and a piece of carrot cake, and I was needing to manage my book. I'd proactively been occupied for a seriously lengthy time span, and by I had my 8th draft and my red pen ready to pick away at it some more. At around page 10, I put the salt and pepper on top of my load of pages, and I went to use the washroom. Right when I returned, a woman with long, hearty shaded hair and decorated with a plaid summer dress was sat in my seat scrutinizing my book. Ordinarily, I said, "Excuse me." She replied by holding her hand up like a stop sign. I pursued my book. She moved it out of my range and read. I stayed there, suspicious, until her look showed up at the lower part of the page. By then, I fervently presented my hand for the appearance of my book. She turned the page over and highlighted her own movement. I battled that my astute wasn't ready for scrutinizing yet. She re-emphasized her sign. I battled that the paper she was holding was my property. She exchanged her sign for a lone finger like to request one more second. I mumbled, "Peace my lip," and permit her to have it. Finally, she looked toward me curiously. I saw the daisy in her hair, and under that, a face more exquisite than the mid-year sun itself. Pure, normal, unashamed greatness. Directly following finding me and down herself, she articulated with a fiendish smile that she wanted to keep my novel, and that in case I wanted it back, I'd have to meet her at the wooden seat in the diversion region in multi-week. In light of everything, she stood up and left. I yelled toward her, battling that my novel was brutal, fragmented, my property. She was by then hidden. Walk around me now past this sprout bed to the wooden seat around there. Plunk down, and I'll continue with my story. I dare say I was to some degree unfortunate as I advanced toward the entertainment region seat 7 days sometime later. In any case, when I plunked down, she put one hand on my 8th draft and one hand on my shoulder, and she told me with a smooth, earnest voice that my story had gotten her innovative psyche not in any way, shape or form like some other. She retold to me that my story was dumbfounding anyway, that she wanted to great make it. Those were her exact words, and they stirred a sparkle in my heart. We sat on that seat for a seriously prolonged stretch of time, numerous weeks, numerous months. We broadened my characters, raised my strain, paced my movement, finished my pinnacle. Every thought she made, taking her pencil from between her lips and twirling it twice around her finger, sanded a cruel edge, filled a plot opening, or set blood running through the character's veins. She worked up the refining fire and walked around me through its center. Furthermore, close to the completion, in light of everything, we got a handle on both a piece of made greatness and memories out of rush and conference in our spirits. I moreover knew that, in her presence, I felt as uncommon as the book we'd made together. By and by, walk around me out into the nook, since it assists me with recalling a field where we sat in the crisp, spring sun expecting replies from distributors. With every month we had spent together, I had grown progressively more joined to her. The greatness directly before her, which caught me all along, had rapidly wouldn't reasonably expect to contrast and the greatness in her cerebrum. She enamored me, tried me, raised me. I thought her mind was pure gold. Anyway, by then, I began to get progressively lengthy glances at her soul, and I fell wildly captivated with it. In case I thought she was pure gold beforehand, I understood she was managed with gems now. I thought I'd seen everything. I thought I'd seen paradise. Then, one day when we were sat in a field a lot of this way, I saw the greatness before her eventually. I had scaled the levels, grasped the profundities, crossed the broadness, and by, with my whole presence, I appreciated her face, I loved her cerebrum, I revered her heart, and I revered her soul, and simultaneously, all as one. She was physical and extraordinary, pleasure and dedication, body and soul, angel and human. She was love. As of now, benevolently follow me back towards the house. On our way, we'll find a willow tree that I laid out 25 years earlier when I was 25-year-old. For sure, it is here, and I'll proceed with my story on a splendid May morning, 1 month before I laid out this tree, whenever she was reached out to a business opportunity in Karachi sorting out old unique duplicates. I complimented the presence of her dream with her. I moved when she moved, and I cheered when she cheered. Then, I walked inseparable with her through the most recent 14 days of squeezing and arranging, attesting air tickets and accommodation, expressing farewell to family and believing colleagues should partake in all that life brings to the table. In addition, we drank tea, cycled all through town, watched movies, window shopped, ate pizza, and I put myself in a position to say goodbye. In any case, when the night before the day of her flight came, I rested in no way, shape, or form. The whole night, I saw open-eye longs for myself sitting alone in a field of daisies. I drove her to the air terminal after lunch the next day. We visited about berserk Mughal rulers and tremendous pizzas, McDonald. Right when we appeared at the air terminal, I assisted her with conveying her packs into the terminal, and I held up while she checked in. Then, I followed her up to the entrances of the security check. I had set myself up against this second the subsequent when she would branch out away from me. I took full breaths. I obliged myself to smile. I exploded inside. I expected to keep her nearby. I expected to go with her. I couldn't leave my home. I couldn't leave her. I couldn't say goodbye. I couldn't remain silent. I really wanted everything, and I would have nothing. I just stayed with a tear in my eye and a tremor in my grip, and she was no more. All of a sudden, she was back, and she was stooping before me. She accepted me ought to marry her. She figured out that she had kept it together for me to ask, but she couldn't remain by any longer. I heard her requesting, I saw her stooping, and I was paralyzed, I was confounded, and I was crying. Somehow, in the aggregate of my considering, in the sum of my contemplating, in the whole of my foundation during the current second, I had never sorted out for this. She said that she would buy a ring in commitment-free expecting that I bought a ticket on the accompanying flight. Taking everything into account, I told her that I was a young, unfit, untraveled, fresh youngster who expected to permit all helpful things to arrive at their genuine completions. Those upset, blundering words broke both of our spirits. She left without saying goodbye. A portion of a month sometime later, the advancement on my book deal came through, and I bought this old house in No Spot and laid out this willow tree in the nursery. I've heard that it addresses scorned love. I basically thought it looked superb, as she did. Years traveled by, and the willow created until I could seek shelter behind its branches to cry. By then, I understood I'd committed a mistake, but by then, I moreover understand that having any sort of effect one way or the other with it was preposterously late. Along these lines, I would hide behind the willow's branches and contemplate her. I'd recall her eyes, her smile, and her little toes, her hair, that daisy, and the spot on her nose. Moreover, I'd cry, and I'd endeavor to make another book. Words would never come in the survey or in the parlor. They wouldn't shape. Anyway, under the willow tree, I could continually make something. I started to talk with the willow tree like it were her. I would request the branches their point of view from my records, and I could hear her voice in my head, answering. She'd tell me where to put a qualifier and where to disregard one. She'd tell me where to predict and where to twist around the subplot. In any case, as years went by and I sorted out some way to strike out a page or two consistently under the tree, I comprehended that my characters were all beautiful, evil, marvelous, committed, careful, and unfortunate. They all had a daisy in their hair. Go with me now to the beech tree with the rope swing. I couldn't form after I comprehended that each character I anytime thought up was her again and again. Hence, I took to swinging here for a seriously lengthy time span. I'd basically swing, also, think. Swing, also, mourn. Swing, also, mumble. Also, life ended up being slow. Life became old. Life began to rot. In spring, when the trees blossomed, I'd hear her mumble in my ear, "Love is the start of life." In summer, when everything is growing, I'd hear her mumble, "Love is the wealth of life." In gather time, when the leaves became splendid, I'd hear her mumble, "Love is the fortune of life." And in winter, when snow gained the headway, I'd hear her mumble, "Love is the fire of life." It sounded wonderful. It sounded right. It let me in on I madly required what I'd ceaselessly lost. Along these lines, she tortured me. Additionally, I cried over it. Additionally, I swung. Additionally, she tortured me. Additionally, I cried and swung. Come, how about we continue to stroll towards the house? Like I said, I was unable to compose any longer. Since words were as yet my expertise and my bank equilibrium and eminence slips were gradually vanishing, I acknowledged a situation at the nearby paper, sealing articles. This occupation started to fill my days, and I just visited the rope swing for a couple of moments each night. She would continuously address me while I was there, however her voice filled calm in any remaining spots. Evening visits to the rope swing became like holy ceremonies, particular snapshots of fellowship. I started to contemplate whether all the other things in my day-to-day existence was prepared to make a stride past her. I started to examine saying the farewell that I was unable to say at the air terminal. I even missed several visits to the rope swing. Then, I missed a month of visits. Then, a year. Then, a decade. Also, I assumed I was free. I thought I'd track down the cheerful consummation. I might want to show you a tree simply behind the house that helps me to remember myself. This is the most seasoned tree in the nursery, and the tree upholds the biggest creeper. Multi-week prior today, I turned 50. My sister coordinated a sublime party with inflatables and cake and decorations and a dinner deserving of sovereignty. She likewise sat on the telephone for a really long time storing up the ideal list of people to attend. She welcomed the hottest characters among family, companions, and partners. She succeeded herself. It's not her shortcoming that I knew none of the relatives. They should have been aliens to me. Furthermore, it's not her shortcoming that she needed to go to her companions to track down any companions whatsoever. Also, what incredible individuals they were. They praised my life as though it were their own. Furthermore, obviously, she made the best decision to welcome my partners, yet in spite of the fact that I understood what work they did and what office they sat in, I couldn't actually say whether they loved a 16 ounces of severe or a glass of wine. Each visitor had a mate and youngsters and a beautiful day-to-day life. My sister could never have realized that that party would remind me without precedent for many years that I'm as yet a spooky man. I'm an old, contorted tree, invaded by a parasitic creeper. How frequently will they need to let us know that there are no blissful endings before we'll trust them? Furthermore, I envision for that reason my sister sent you, the neighborhood Perry, to stroll round my nursery and pay attention to my story. Furthermore, I'm grateful. She's continuously paying special attention to me, and she's a firm devotee that just recounting the story helps here and there. In this way, thank you for driving way out here, and tolerating me. The dear neighborhood Perry, who had listened quietly with her tissue to her eye, represented the initial time. Your sister requested that I pay attention to your story, however that is not the explanation she sent me. The Perry cleaned her eyes and inhaled profoundly. Do you truly think it took your sister a long stretch of time on the telephone to welcome her own loved ones? The Perry cleaned her eyes once more and put a hand on her heart. She was setting up your birthday present. Do you see the vehicle coming up the drive? Do you perceive the face set close to your sister? That face has a similar story as you. Her parishioner burst out crying. The Perry embraced him, and they influenced to and fro until the vehicle ground to a halt external the house. Isn't this tree simply the ideal spot? The Perry said as she took a gold ring from her pocket. She actually needs to. Isn't that right? He took the ring from the Perry's hand, and he cried stronger, cried more grounded, and cried more joyful.